Hi and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Haven't posted for a little while, still recovering from my knee operation and not all that mobile, and also my wife hasn't been all that well either, so we've been an example of what happens as you get older. And it's very disconcerting at times because you think you're going to stay young forever, but you don't. And we're going through a time in our life now where we see, because we're involved in a nursing home partly, we see lots of people passing on, and we see the pageant of life, the parade, the passing parade, and then we start to see some of our friends who have already moved on from this world, and some who aren't too far off, and we don't know that we might not be too far off, who knows. Anyway, that's a bit of a long-winded preamble. So I was watching an interview on YouTube the other day with a fairly well-known celebrity. I won't mention his name and I won't mention the YouTube channel because I don't like to sort of try and promote what other people are doing through my channel, and I try not to promote what I'm doing through their channel either. And so sometimes I'll make comments and I think, oh, I shouldn't have done that, because they'll link back to me about other people's posts, and I quite often delete them when I think about it. Anyway, that's beside the point. So I was watching this interview, and the interviewer was asking this celebrity what was, I think the question was along the lines of, what was some of the best advice that you got from your parents or from your father in particular? And I think his answer was, I'm not sure this is word perfect, I haven't gone back to watch it again, but his father told him when he was very, very young, every person has on their forward written this, these words, make me feel important. And they unpacked that a little bit in the interview. And then I thought, wow, that's really so important. We have to, and that's sort of how God looks at us too. He makes us feel important if we let him. And one of the things that I got from that is that every person you meet, you talk to them and find out about them and encourage them, and do as little as talking about yourself as possible. And that's a bit hard for me because I've got so much stuff that I've said on this YouTube channel. But anyway, do as little of talking about yourself as possible. And it's a pretty good policy to have. You make lots of friends. And I remember listening to one of my mentors who's on this channel, Frank Hunting, a Church of Christ minister. I was listening to one of his old tape series the other night on School of Prayer, which he did in a number of different churches that he was involved in. And it was a fantastic teaching seminar, and that many of us who sat through those learned a lot. And one of the things I heard him say at the very start of this School of Prayer the other night was he talked about what he calls time bombs. And I guess these time bombs tie in with making people feel important. He said, many years ago, he said a young man who wasn't all that much older than himself sat down with him one day when he was only young, when Frank was only young, and this man was only a few years older, and shared a few things with him and some encouragement, and talked about things. And he said that talk was like a time bomb for me. It helped change my whole perspective, and it was a very important part in my life's journey. He said, I bumped into that man some years later on and asked him if he remembered that, and he said no, he didn't remember that conversation at all. But that's what Frank was talking about, time bombs. If we just go about the business of making someone feel important, you don't know what sort of impact that's going to have on them, on their whole way of thinking and their whole life going ahead. I remember some years back, and this is talking a little bit about myself, I guess, but I've always made a point, without realising of having heard that interview before, of trying to do that sort of thing. My dad was a good example of doing that. But anyway, one night I was walking around the block, and there was a young guy who I knew, who lived in the neighbourhood, and he was sitting on the gutter in the street, in our street, and he looked very downtrodden and depressed. So I sat down with him and talked with him for about half an hour to find out what was going on. I didn't really find out what was going on, but anyway, I got up and left, and he thanked me for sitting down and taking the time to talk to him. And he went through a pretty tough time in his life. And I like to think that that was a little bit of a time bomb, because I bumped into him some years later and he was back on track at that time anyway. I hope he still is. But to me, that was a little bit of a time bomb. And I remember speaking to my late uncle, Uncle Ron, his name was, and he was a wonderful Englishman originally, but married an Australian relative of mine. And anyway, he was dying, and I went over to his state where he was and visited him in the nursing home where he was, or in the hospital where he was. And I was talking to him, and he said he had really had an intense fear of dying, and he was really panicking about it. He didn't know what lay ahead. He knew he was dying. He knew he didn't have long, and he was really scared about what happens next. Anyway, the pastor of his son, I think, came to visit him and shared the gospel of Jesus with him, and Uncle Ron accepted all that he had to say and accepted Jesus, basically, and returned to he'd been brought up in a Christian home, but he'd gone right away from that. And he returned to his Christian faith, and he said, I'm so much at peace, I'm so glad that happened. He said, I don't have the fear now of moving from here to there. And so that was a bit of a time bomb. It was a calculated time bomb, but it was very timely, wasn't it? Now, I'm going to share a little time bomb with you from the scriptures, which you might find helpful to understand things. I know the gospel talks about life after death and all that, but even so, if you were to adopt the Christian lifestyle, you might find there are some disadvantages to that, but you might find that your life is a whole lot better, even if you didn't fully believe in everything you believed in. But the time bomb that is in the Gospels, which Christians are always trotting out, is called John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. Now, a lot of people dismiss that, but it's where the gospel starts when you come to start understanding it. And one of the ways that someone shared with me some years ago, the time bomb that is dropped in that verse, is that if you change the words "the world" in that verse and put your own name in, it makes it very personal, and the fact that God loves you. And I'll just do that for you in a minute. But it means that even if there was no one else in the whole world, there is somebody who loves you, and he is God. So just try this for an experiment at home if you've never done this. So, for God so loved the world, say your names, put your own name in it. So I'm going to put my name in it. For God so loved Jeff that he gave his only begotten Son, that if Jeff believes in him, he will not perish, but have everlasting life. And you put your own name in there and see how that comes out. But isn't it wonderful, the fact that if you can accept by faith, you can do all the research in the world to find out whether you should or you shouldn't believe. But if you come to the point where you've done all that and you accept that by faith, that is a wonderful thing, a wonderful time bomb to pick up on right now. You might not, the fuse might be lit for you at the moment, but it might come to fruition later on. Anyway, so there you go, dropping time bombs, making other people feel important. How are you? Where do you come from? I was talking to a girl in a nursing home the other day, visiting a friend, and she was Indian, and a nurse in there, and I think she was from the Sikh religion. And she told us that I started asking her questions about what she liked about India and all that sort of thing, and she told us she was going on a holiday back there soon. And she told us about the Golden Temple, which is in the north of India, and she was going to spend a fair bit of her time, apart from spending time with her family, she was going to spend a fair bit of her time there helping out in this Golden Temple. You can look it up on Google, which I did. It's called the Golden Temple in India, and it's run by the Sikh people. And she said they do a wonderful thing there in giving out food to the needy people, and I found out they do. But anyway, what I was going into, and I think I'd already seen that interview, but I try and do that with as many people as I can. Try to make them feel that we are interested in them. One of my sons who sells real estate says, what does he say? I think I've shared this on here before. It's not about you when you are talking to someone, it's about them. You are not the story. The person you're talking to is the story. Something along those words. I think it's from one of those How to Win Friends and Influence People books. I don't think I've quoted that right, but anyway. So there you go. There's some little thoughts for today. Think about some of those things. See if you can start dropping time bombs. I've had some conversations with some of my grandchildren at times, which has led to interesting conversations. But most of the time they're not. You don't think they're switched on to us adults, us oldies, but every now and then they give you a little bit of feedback to let you know they are listening. So maybe set out today to make someone else important by talking to them, not talking about yourself, having just talked a little bit about myself. So thanks for watching. Like if you like, subscribe if you wish, and I'll see you next time. See you later.